Welcome to Books on Air, the podcast that tells the story behind the book. It includes insights from authors about how they compose their work, what inspires them, and what they hope you'll take away from their book. Here's your host for this episode of Books on Air.
Welcome to the Books on Air podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and this is a podcast where listeners get the secret story behind every book. Joining me today is R.A. Scanzillo, author of the book Unsolicited, Short Words and Random Chapters from a Latent Bloomer. How would you like a trip across the lifetime of a late-blooming bloomer woman? Care to take on a densely packed set of poems and stories guaranteed to both preoccupy and wear you out? Well, that's where we're going to go today. So, R.A., I want to welcome you to the Books on Air podcast.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Let's start out by telling the audience just a little bit about yourself and how you came to write your book.
Well, I write first out of the chute because I'm a social disaster. I'm the cringe at every party, and I'm the one that, observes the people around me and then goes home and writes about the experiences. And this started at a really young age. I was 4 or 5, and I wanted to write my first story, and I asked my mother how to spell the words so I could get them on the page. And my father was a storyteller, and he had quite a life, and he would captivate us at the kitchen table. So I've been writing as long as I can remember. And this book was compiled and published because while I had been writing, blogging, poems, essays, stories, AI and intellectual property theft converging, all of a sudden it became really important to me to document and get my name on my material and get it out there just as a testament, So I've been collecting I gathered up as many poems as I thought were, worth reading and about 50-some stories, and they're all in the same book. And so here it is, finally, after all these years.
Right. Right. So you have, I think your poems are arranged in 6 different categories. So did you purposely write them that way, or is that just how it kind of worked out when you sorted through them all?
I categorized them after I collected them and thought, these were really heavily influenced by Billy Collins, or these were influenced by Kavanaugh, or these would work really well as lyrics to songs. So I separated them out accordingly, and then there's sort of a miscellaneous category for just about everything else, because the poems cover, there's some silly ones, there are some really dark poems, there are some obscure, the kind that, you have to really think about, there are documented experiences in these poems, because, a poem for me is a capsule. It's like a kernel of an emotional experience. And I try to keep them small. Yeah, I try to keep them small and to the point, and I want them to sort of nail it. I want people, when they read them, to go, whoa, or wow, or say to themselves, this means something to me. Poetry written by poets who are writing for each other, some poets are really gifted and they have historical context and they're able to draw upon so much imagery from the past. I don't write that way. My images are stark, right in front of you, populist, if you will. They're based in personal experience and the experiences of others around me. And I want them to be relatable by everyone. So I guess I'm not a poet's poet. I'm a people's poet. Does that, I hope, make sense? And then the stories, the stories are similar. Some of them are more prosy, they're more like stream of consciousness narratives, and others are fantasy, they're the characters I've imagined, but most of the characters are based in people I've known. And I don't think there's an author alive who would say otherwise. We're always writing about who we knew and what happened to us. And then we narrate those experiences. So I have to say at the outset, this is a testament to the life of one boomer woman who was raised a little bit differently. I didn't really, come of age like the other girls around me. I was not liberated sexually at the age of whatever. I was watching the world go by around me because my family raised me in a very sectarian Christian environment, and I had to sort of elbow my way out of that to find my voice. So and I'm not defying God or, faith. I don't mean to imply that. It just means that I watched the world go by around me. Like, have you ever seen the blob tree illustration, Sloan? The blob tree, it's used by psychologists. There's a cartoon drawing of all kind of people up in a tree, and some of them are at the very top, and some are hanging from a branch, and some are sitting in the tree. And they're all numbered. And number 1 is the person standing on the ground looking up at everybody else in the tree. Well, that's me. I've just been watching and listening and then documenting, and I just love the solitary art of writing. Because
so do you want to share one of your poems with us?
Sure. I've been a musician my whole life, professional musician, orchestral, collaborative music teacher. I've just been in that milieu. So here's one called The Concert. And I'm not an orator of poems. I'll just read it as best I can. The Concert. On a mahogany lacquered spinet against the back wall of an empty rear lobby at the college dormitory in July, the large-shouldered blonde with upturned tufts of fading hair plays the Revolutionary War prelude for her 3-year-old daughter, who sits, just like her brother, watching his father gut a fish.
Very interesting.
It's meant to be kind of ironically funny, but very observational. Here's another one, the anesthesiologist. Bow tie underneath a grin peeking out as he looks in to greet the body waiting for his recipe for making sleep. The anesthesiologist keeps a special secret list of pills to feed the patient who, hallucinating mucus plugs, devouring microscopic bugs, decides that he is just a... Have you ever been anesthetized?
Once, yes. You know what happens when they're asking you to tell you your name and address, and then all of a sudden out you go. Right in the middle of the sentence, you can't finish the sentence because you're already out. That's what happens when you're anesthetized. So this is kind of a little capsule of what it feels like to go under general anesthetic. Yes, I've had that one time. Mine was counting backwards from 10, and I think I got to 8, and that was it, and I was out.
You don't remember. I tried telling a joke once, and I couldn't get to the punchline because I was already out. And I had to, after it was over, I had to tell the doctor, oh, by the way, the punchline of the joke was. So, but not all my poems are meant to be funny. Some are really dark, and in fact, I address issues, life experiences that are troubling. Addiction is one of my themes. Relationships that don't work, relationships that we really try to save, and they don't. When you're my age, you kind of look back and you're looking at the totality thus far, and you have something to say. And so that's what it's about. And if you're in your 40s or 50s, well, I don't know if I'm wise, but I'll tell you, I think there is wisdom in testifying, because we need to share. The familiarity factor is huge. The world right now, totally unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or tonight or wherever we go. And if I can reach a reader who needs to identify with something, who can say, oh, I know that person, or I've been there, I've felt this, this has been my experience, then that familiarity is comforting, right? Because it takes us away from the literal world and not into a fantasy. This is not escape. This is identity. This is reality.
Yeah, it's relatable.
Yeah,
right.
it's reality addressed, and I'm hoping for that. I hope that anyone of any age, regardless of gender and persuasion, can find something, that is meaningful.
Right. What lessons do you think people can take away from your book?
That it's important to be open, brave, I suppose. This is raw. If you're going to write, you should say it. Tell it the way it is.
Right.
Without fear, because words on paper are quiet, and they can be met in a silent place. You don't have to be out where you're vulnerable around others. You can just address things alone with the words on the page. And that's protective. There's something protective about that, really. And so if you're going to write or you're going to read or you're going to read my book, I hope that it provides that for you. And whoever you are, because words can be comforting and encouraging and identifiable. I'm babbling now for sure. All right, I'll stop.
So what would you say surprised you the most about writing your book?
What surprised me the most was, what surprised me once I really started writing in earnest with the intention to have readers read me was how much a part of my daily life it became. These stories, I'll get a title. I'll be driving or walking, and I'll get a title. And if I have a title, I'll come home and I'll start to write. And if I don't start to write, it'll be gone. It's almost like it comes through me from another source. So the surprising part is, where does this all come from? And how is it that I'm able to tap into something that just happened at a wedding I just played, or at a gathering somewhere, or a family gathering. The compulsion to get it on paper and collect them, these experiences. There are 53. I have 900 essays at my blog, and there are 50 stories in this book, and there are 100 poems. And I'm not done yet, So what's surprising is that, there's a volume here, and that if you just sit down and start, you'll be amazed at what comes out of you. And I would hope that people who read me will sit down and say, well, I'm going to write something today. And not just journaling for therapy, but being creative is its own reward. You're probably a creative yourself. What would we do without our creative selves? I feel really sorry for people who say, well, I'm not a creative. I can't. Well, yes, you are. You just have to get started, And
be willing to spend the time on it.
That words will come out of you, and you won't know where they come from. All you have to do is write the first sentence, and that sentence will give rise to the next one, and that's how it works for me. I don't outline and plan anything. If I do that, I'm sort of frozen. I just have to just spill it, and it pours out until it pours out, and thank God for that. So, that was what was surprising. It's just that here it is. I'm finally holding in my hands something that I never thought I would do. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and so you talked a little bit about this, but who would you say your book would appeal to and why?
Well, first of all, I'd have to admit that it would appeal to my generation, women and men, because there are he's and she's in here. I write from the third person. So that people don't think I'm talking about me. You know how when you're in a conversation with someone who says I this and I that about 30 times, that's off-putting. You get the impression that they're really absorbed with themselves. But when you read something written in the third person, you're at enough of a distance that maybe your reader will identify and say, well, that could be me or that could be someone else. Now I forgot the question.
I was just asking, who would you say the book would appeal to?
My generation for sure, but not just my generation. It'll appeal to any woman or man who has been frustrated trying to sustain a healthy relationship, with someone else, maybe family issues, maybe dysfunctionality, maybe codependence, maybe addiction, maybe whatever has yet to be named. What we see on the outside is never what happens at home, and we know this. We all do.
Right.
So I think that I'm hoping it appeals to anyone who gets past the first few. This is not a book you're going to sit down and read from cover to cover. It's dense. You know, when you read short poems, you read one, read the next one, but you might stop after a few. You might skip ahead and go to a story or two. The stories are short. So you kind of have to let your mind rest after each one because it's too abrupt to move on to the next, I think. So people who are willing to return to a book, keep it on the nightstand, wherever they read, and kind of nurse it, you know, work your way through, take your time. And in that vein, I think it could appeal to anybody, you know, who needs to sit alone and not just be entertained, but really, I want to provoke my readers. This is not a light read. There are a few, like I read you the comic relief poems, but they're not all like that. There's comic relief, but mostly it's thoughtful, introspective, reflective stuff. And so I hope anybody in the mood for that will reach for it.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a really interesting book. My guest today has been R.A. Scanzillo, author of the book Unsolicited, Short Words in Random Chapters from a Latent Boomer. Before we close out today, what do you hope readers learn or take away after reading your book?
I hope they get encouraged and feel more fearless and are able to say to themselves, yeah, I recognize myself. I can go forward and with confidence and live my life without fear. I hope that it gives the readers that kind of sense about themselves.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, R.A., for joining us today. It's been great to talk to you.
You too, Sloan. Great to meet you. Thank you.
You can find more about the book Unsolicited, Short Words in Random Chapters from a Latent Boomer on Amazon, and I'll link to the book in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. I'm Sloan Clemont, and I hope you'll join us for the next Books on Air podcast. Remember, you never know who's going to be here, and you never know what we're going to talk about. Thank you so much for listening.